Jauan Jennings, Adam Schefter reported on Wednesday, has signed a deal with the 49ers, a contract extension. It's technically a 1-year extension, but he got a free agent tender, so it's like a 2-year. He's under contract for 2 years, but it got announced as a 1-year extension. I don't know how the machinations work. He's with the team through 2025 on a contract worth up to $15.4 million. Again, this is via Adam Schefter. That includes $10.5 million guaranteed. Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, so because he didn't sign his tender, it's essentially a new contract, right? So it's it's a new 2-year contract, which is akin to, as Adam Schefter pointed out, a 1-year extension. It basically means Jauan Jennings is under contract this year, next year for the 49ers at a pretty reasonable number, something averaging $7.5 million, close to per season, which I think the way we talked about it, what Jauan Jennings is worth maybe on the open market, I think that's about market rate for a really, really good third receiver. I think it's fair to say Jauan is a really good third receiver, right? Yep. He does a lot of the things you need a third receiver to do, because he's not going to be a guy who gets 10 targets a game. He's going to be somebody you need on the field and run it for running plays. He's going to be somebody who's going to win on third down for you. He's going to be a red zone target. Jauan is just like a ton. He deserves a ton of credit, frankly. He's a 7th round pick out of Tennessee. I know you know how much he was beloved by Tennessee Volunteer Nation.
Boy, do I.
with all the content you cranked out when the 49ers drafted him in the 7th round. But just you look at good teams over time, right? A lot of them have star players, obviously. But there are a lot of really good players on the margins that some of these teams have that keep them in contention for a long time and make big plays and big moments. And they might not produce at the same level week in and week out as the star players. But like the Super Bowl as a prime example, when teams are taking away your stars and you need other guys to step up, Jauan Jennings has proven he can do that. And he's proven he can do that in the biggest moments of the season. Yep. And there's a pretty good chance, had the 49ers won the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, that Jauan Jennings would have at least been a candidate for Super Bowl MVP. So I like the signing. We can talk about what it means for the 49ers receiving core over the long haul. I think, this raises the question, again, what were they doing drafting a receiver, Ricky Pearsall, with the 31st pick in the draft? After bringing back Jennings, presumably while they're in the process of signing Brandon Ayuk to a new contract extension, which is, we're expecting that to happen at some point this offseason. We can talk about that. But on the surface, just looking at Jauan Jennings, 2 years, over $15 million, I think it makes a ton of sense for both sides. I think he's a really good number 3 receiver, and I think he's a really good player on the margins of the roster. And I think those are the types of moves you make if you're a smart front office, and the 49ers have proven to be a pretty smart front office.
Yeah, you get him on the team through his age 28 season. And I think the most notable thing here is this benefits the 49ers for multiple reasons, and that dovetails into kind of the future of their receiver room. So I'll put a pin in that. But I think for Jennings, this gives him an opportunity to maybe produce a little more over the next couple of years, especially into next year, because there's a very real scenario where Jauan Jennings is just wide receiver 2 for the 49ers in 2024, where he could really put up some numbers. And then he's hitting free agency as a 28-year-old going on 29, where he might get a legit kind of wide receiver 2 contract. So I think this really works out for him. It's good for the 49ers because of kind of everything you said up top. There are just so many things they can do because of what he does as a blocker, where even when they go out of 3 receiver sets, they can run pretty effectively out of that. And the Niners, as good as Brandon Ayuk is as a run blocker, the Niners just don't have a player with Jauan Jennings' skill set. Just his size, his tenacity as a blocker, his football guy term, his ability to win at the catch point. And I think I go back to, he had the huge Super Bowl, but then the Green Bay game, he had that huge, one-handed catch on the 3rd down conversion where Purdy just floated one to the middle of the field back across his body, and Jennings went up over a defender and hauled it in with one hand. That's just kind of I hate using the term special, but that's just kind of a play that not every third receiver in the league is going to go make. So
Mhm.
if you have a player who can block like hell for a team that's going to run it about half the time, and a receiver who the quarterback trusts in third downs and red zone situations, I don't care what his volume looks like. Jauan Jennings is going to be a productive player, and it's at a reasonable price too. So I think this is just all around a good idea for the 49ers. Now, or for Jennings and the 49ers. Now, I think that there's an added value here for San Francisco, where when you start to kind of look at the future of the receiving core, because there's a chance that like next season, let's operate real quick under the assumption that they extend Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel is a cap casualty, basically. They either trade him or they have to let him go, whatever it is. So Deebo Samuel's not on the team. The Niners are then looking at Ricky Pearsall in year 2, who may or may not have proven anything in year 1. Jacob Cowing in year 2, same deal. And then having Jauan Jennings on the roster, having a reliable option on the roster, could be a really, really significant thing. So that's the first thing that really jumps out to me when you talk about what Jauan Jennings means to this team, not only this year but into next year.
If they end up moving on from Deebo Samuel, which it seems like that's where the wind is blowing, right? It seems like the 49ers are going to pay Brandon Ayuk this offseason, say thank you for your services, Deebo Samuel. We're gonna do what the Packers did with Devontae Adams, what the Chiefs did with Tyreek Hill, and they're gonna go get pretty good value potentially if Deebo Samuel has a good season for Deebo in a trade, and hope that his best years are behind him and not in front of him, right? And that's a pretty common trend in the NFL, and I think there's an argument to be made that maybe receivers are being somewhat overvalued given how many really good receivers there are.
Yes.
Right, because you can replace them, and that's probably a separate podcast. But just overall, if you're looking at, like you said, in 2025, if you're looking at a world where Deebo Samuel's playing for the New York Jets or somewhere else, yeah, Jauan Jennings is a starting receiver at $7.5 million or whatever the structure ends up being. That's potentially a bargain. And you know what? The 49ers are probably going to draft another receiver in the first 3 or 4 rounds of the 2025 draft, if that's a scenario too, right? Like maybe they do the thing where they trade Deebo for a first or second round pick, turn around and use that pick on a receiver to try to find a replacement. That's very possible.